Hey everyone, welcome back to another old laptop review, and in this video we're going to talk about the Lenovo ThinkPad 11E. Specifically, we're going to talk about the 20ED. There are several different versions of the Lenovo ThinkPad 11E across a few generations, and a way that you can tell what type of ThinkPad 11E this is by looking at the sticker in the back. It will tell you the type number or the type identification of this laptop. And in this case, again, it's 20ED, which is powered by the AMD quad-core A4-6210 CPU. So we're going to look at the specs, performance, aesthetics, and my opinions of this laptop in this video. A lot of general information about the 11E series, first of all. So this is the sort of the successor to the ThinkPad X140E series, and the X1 something 0E series has had several generations. I think like there's the X120E, 130E, and then the 140E. And then afterwards, it got replaced by the ThinkPad 11E from thereafter. Now, Lenovo's ThinkPad something E series, anything that ends with an E is meant for the education market. So the 11E is similar to that. It's meant for the education market, similar as the 140E, for example, that it replaced. There's another YouTube channel that did a review of the ThinkPad 11E, and I think, that channel just did a really garbage job on it. Mostly because it used like a really bad reference point as to the quality of this laptop. So I would, if you see that video, just ignore it. I mean, they used like a $1,000 MacBook Pro as a reference point, and it's just kind of stupid to do that. This laptop, as with the education series from Lenovo, is meant for um, the education market, which means that it has to stand up to abuse by students. It has to be cheap to produce, so it can't be very expensive, and it has to be really durable. So comparing it to like a MacBook Pro is just kind of dumb because I mean, not very many school districts are going to buy hundreds of these laptops or hundreds of MacBook Pros for 11-year-old kids who might be dropping it, spilling stuff on it, knocking it in certain places. So um, for just when you're looking at this laptop, just keep these things in mind, keep the cost and keep the durability in mind. I've already done a review on my channel for the Lenovo ThinkPad 140E, and the biggest difference that between the X Education series and the 11E series is the aesthetics. Of course, the hardware changes, but the aesthetics has just improved a great deal since that X series. So this has gotten much thinner. It just has a much more attractive look to it, and it's a little bit lighter. I feel it's a little bit lighter as well. So if you're taking this out in public, you're not going to worry too much about, you're not going to be too self-conscious about, your laptop looking very dated. All right, let's first start with the exterior of the laptop. So on top, you have this smooth black surface that really doesn't have any textures on it. You have the older Lenovo logo, which has since been updated. The ThinkPad light, I think that's the power indicator on top of the eye there. And this is the Wi-Fi indicator. I think, some teachers might find this useful to kind of monitor their students. And so this is kind of like an educational feature. These two hinges are pretty solid. So some students may be opening and closing the lid a lot. They sometimes might even be lifting the laptop using the lid, which is not what you're supposed to do. But in case they do something like this, then these hinges are pretty solid and they should handle some abuse from that kind of behavior. In the front, there's really nothing. So we're going to start looking at the side. Uh, if I can turn on this light here. So this is power output, power input right there. Gigabit Ethernet, a USB 2.0 port, I believe, and that has power on it as well. You have the headphone jack. I think it also has the mic jack there as well, and you have the SD card slot. On this side, you've got the Kensington lock. and full-size HDMI port, USB 3.0 port this time, a volume rocker, and a power port. In the back, there's really nothing. So there's a vent there for dissipating heat, but that is about it. Once you open up the laptop, you're greeted to these giant bezels. And of course, some people might think that's ugly, but I think it's not that bad. I think it's kind of it gives the laptop some character. But one thing that you have to kind of pay attention to that this is an 11.6-inch screen, and with the bezels, it kind of makes the laptop more of a 12.5-inch to maybe even a 13-inch size. So do keep that in mind. If you're used to, seeing 13-inch laptops with thin bezels, this is going to be about the same size overall. But overall, it's still going to be it's going to be a light laptop. It's going to be pretty portable, and so I don't really mind these bezels at all. Then the reason why there's big bezels is, again, this is an education-oriented laptop, so kids, and the display is something that gets damaged, can get damaged a lot. So you also see that it has like this rubber padding around the lid, which helps to absorb shock. The plastic around the lid is going to help absorb some shock as well. So, again, this design is meant for kids that might be abusing these laptops at school. Now, moving on to the keyboard, you have the chiclet style keyboard, and you'll notice that the track point that comes with the traditional IBM ThinkPads is gone. I don't personally use it, so that's a good thing for me. I'm not sure if kids nowadays use this either, but I never used it. I think it's kind of hard to use. So I'm happy that the track point is gone from the Lenovo ThinkPad X140E in the previous generations. The trackpad has also been changed. So along with the physical keys removed here, the trackpad is now a more modern design as compared with the original X140E trackpad. The old trackpad has kind of this texture on it. This one does not, and it has these like none. I don't know. They're still kind of clicky keys on the bottom, but they're not like kind of separate. There's not separate keys anymore as compared with maybe some of the older trackpads you've seen on ThinkPads. So overall, the keyboard is a more modern design, and as far as the typing experience, I liked it. The keyboard is a little bit smaller than what you're probably used to if you're using like a 14 or 15-inch laptop. But overall, I've taken this laptop with me on vacations when I'm traveling abroad and I need to do some emails or social media. I need to type up some stuff. It's been fine. There's enough key travel. It's comfortable enough. It's not the most comfortable experience, but it's comfortable enough for me to use, for an hour at a time or something like that. Moving on to the display, it's 11.6-inch, 1366 by 768 TN panel. The quality of this display is pretty mediocre. I wouldn't say it's really bad. I don't say it's above average either. It's just above average either. It's just pretty just middle of the road for TN panels. The brightness is okay. The color accuracy is what you would expect from a TN panel. They can't spend too much money on this kind of laptop for students, so it just gets the job done. Moving on to hardware, we're going to start talking about the CPU first because I think there's not that much information about the A4-6210 CPU or APU that is on this laptop. So a little bit of background. So right now, AMD's current microarchitecture is called Ryzen or Zen or Ryzen. And before Ryzen, AMD used two separate microarchitectures for their APUs, depending on the power usage that they wanted to achieve. So for like the higher voltage, which is they're called the low voltage CPUs, something between like 25 and then 35 watt. They used the heavy machinery cores such as bulldozer, steamroller, excavator, and pile driver. And for their ultra low voltage cores, so those between like the 17 and 15 watts, they use what are called the cap cores, Bobcat, Jaguar, and later Puma. So the lower voltage cores actually turned out to be more efficient. Their design for the low power cores turned out to be more efficient than their designs for the higher wattage and higher power cores. And so it turns out that the A4-6210 is one of those lower voltage, ultra low voltage cores. And I'm really happy that this kind of this architecture made it into this laptop. What it really does is balance performance and battery life. So you have 4 cores running at 1.8 gigahertz. While that is not the most powerful thing out there, it'll handle basic tasks pretty well, and we'll take a look at that a little bit later. But in general, the quad-core 1.8 gigahertz CPU on this will be able to handle your daily tasks such as web browsing with multiple tabs, email, documents, social media, some light, very, very light, editing, like content work, maybe just editing photos and things like that. As I mentioned, I took this laptop with me on vacation. I've taken photos. I need to just crop some photos, edit some colors once in a while, just very light stuff. And this is able to handle it quite well. If I'm on the road and need to play YouTube videos, things like that, it'll handle it quite well as well. The integrated graphics subsystem on this APU is branded R3. Now, R3 isn't meant to be any kind of gaming solution. It might actually be able to play some older games, especially like 2D games, and maybe some older 3D games on lower settings. But in general, this is really meant for to handle like HD video playback, high resolution videos, going to help with things like that. That's even though it's kind of like a low power, low capability graphics chip, is actually going to be better than what you see on the Celeron versions of the ThinkPad 11E. So if you're doing anything like video playback or anything that's slightly more graphics intensive, you might want to consider, if you're in the market for an 11E, try to pick the AMD version instead of the Celeron version. Okay, one of the things that I like to test with CPUs is how well it can handle H.265 or HEVC playback. So this chip does not have hardware accelerated H.265 playback. And so everything is being rendered on the CPU side right now. It's not being handled by the GPU at all. And so what we're doing right now is we're playing back an H.265 1080p video. And a 1080p video is actually higher resolution than what the built-in display can handle. But it can, by playing it back, what you're doing is you're forcing the CPU to render at 1080p, and then playing back at a lower resolution. So what you can see right now, the CPU is actually handling it quite well. It's only hitting maybe up to 60% of the maximum CPU usage. So even with software rendering of H.265, it's actually doing it quite well. So it just tells you how efficient this processor is at handling kind of normal tasks. Even though like H.265 playback is not quite normal, it's something that not that many people are doing right now, but it's kind of like the next generation codec. It's more intensive than the H.264 standard that we're currently using, that we're seeing on YouTube and things like that. But as you can see, even with some more intensive tasks like this, it can still handle it quite well. The laptop comes with 4 gigabytes of memory stock, and you can upgrade that to 8 gigabytes. There is only one DIMM slot, which I will show later. So that means you can only put one stick in. And so you're going to be limited, because this is DDR3, you're going to be limited to 8 gigabytes of memory total. And the reason why you're seeing 3.4 gigs here is because half a gigabyte is taken up by the R3 integrated graphics. The storage, the default storage is a 500 gigabyte hard drive, spinning hard drive, but I've upgraded that to an SSD, which is something I really recommend doing. I just put a like 120 gigabyte SSD in there, which is enough for basic use, web browsing and things like that for me. The SSD would also help you um, keep the keep the power consumption lower than a hard drive would. If you decide to keep the hard drive, though, I think it is a 7200 RPM hard drive, so it's not like the worst drive out there. So it's an option if you really want more storage and you want to keep costs low. The Wi-Fi, I believe, is an AC Wi-Fi card, so you're going to get higher speeds than the N. Okay, here's just a sample from the speaker output. Hopefully you can hear that it is actually pretty good for a laptop of this size and price level. The speakers can get pretty loud, and so it can actually make a pretty decent multimedia laptop if you want to. Here's a capture of the webcam output. Unfortunately, the microphone on this particular unit is broken, so I have to use another laptop to record. But the laptop webcam records at about 15 to 30 FPS depending on the lighting conditions. That's actually really impressive for a laptop of this budget level, and it's probably better than 75 to 80% of laptops out there right now. Opening up this laptop is quite simple, and all you have to do is to remove 6 screws, or actually just undo 6 screws, and you don't even need any prying tools. All you have to do is use your fingernails and then pull it up and then out. So it's very easy to open, and what you get access to is this right here. You have a 34 watt hour battery, which takes up most of the space in here, and that is good enough capacity for a laptop of this size and power consumption. You have the Wi-Fi card, you have the CPU cooling here, you have the CMOS battery, and you have, as I mentioned, only one DIMM slot, which is enough. I mean, you can put an 8 gigabyte stick in there, and that's probably it's going to be good enough for like 95% of the people out there, especially if you're not doing like content creation and stuff like that. And here's the 2.5-inch slot, which I have a SSD in there right now. So everything is very easily upgradable. No mystery here. Very easy to maintain. My final opinions on this laptop. I really love this laptop. I think, given what it's supposed to do and given what I'm doing with it, it's actually one of my favorite laptops I've ever used in my life. It's pretty compact. It's cheap. It has pretty good battery life. It does all the normal things I expect it to do, like basic web browsing and social media, like when I'm away from my home on vacation. It's an excellent secondary laptop, and sometimes it can be a good education laptop or a primary laptop for light users as well. So I have no complaints about this laptop at all. It's just absolutely amazing for what it's supposed to do. Don't listen to the people who try to compare it to like $1,000 or $2,000 laptop. That's not the market is trying to address. If you need a basic laptop for documents, for your web, for your social media, for videos, this is great. And yeah, just I really highly recommend this one. Okay, see you next time, and I hope you enjoyed this video.